But what are your thoughts to some of these big stories? Kayode joins me again for a review. Hello again, Kayode.
Bukola, let's walk through it, shall we? But one of the stories the Nigerians have been talking about is the revelation from Dangote saying the stakes, which a lot of people have been banking on, I should say, every time they say, well, Nigeria owns 20% of Dangote refinery through NNPCL, so not to worry, we're part of the business. But he says, no, it's not 20%, as a lot of people think or assumed. It is 7.2%. So a lot of people went back in time and said, wait a minute, we remember the NNPCL saying, we're getting funds to get these stakes. And I think it was as early as 2021 when there was a lot of conversation around this, that NNPCL said that, you know what, we're getting 20% for $2.7 billion. So a lot of people dug back and said, so what then happened? But if you read further, you realize that it was said that 1 billion of that 2.7 billion naira funding was being paid from the Lekki Refinery Funding Limited. 1 billion was paid to Dangote Refinery. $36 million accounted for transaction costs. So they sort of split it. And essentially what that meant is that in that statement, NNPC said that the balance of 1.76 will be paid upon completion of the refinery. So it's a mixture, money and then the supply of crude. So it appears as though now Dangote is buying from US. There are reports that he may be buying from Brazil. Whether or not that is true is another thing entirely. So obviously, Nigeria is not keeping the end of its bargain to supply crude. So it's a no-brainer. But here's the point, Bukola. People are saying, why did it take Dangote to come out to tell Nigerians that we don't have 20%? Why didn't NNPCL come out to say this? It's a public company. Whether or not it's been mutated into what, public limited liability or what have you, it's still a company owned by Nigerians.
Well, with 7.2% now, I wonder how much leverage that Nigeria has on the company, and how much, to what extent Nigerians can demand, price accountability from the company, and how much Nigerians can demand, the provision and to ensure provision of supply of petroleum products throughout the country from the company.
Absolutely.
Because 7.2% stake is, very minimal.
Even with 20%, it's debatable how much influence you'll have. But the point is, NNPCL, the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, need to come clean on these things. Yes, NNPCL gave a response, but why did it come after that revelation was made? So,
and is it too late to redeem, that stake, really?
Well,
because
good question you ask, Bukola, but whether or not that is a priority for NNPCL or
the promise of energy security is quite important. Nigeria has had more than 3 decades of a very big challenge of petroleum, the supply of petroleum products throughout the country.
It's a no-brainer. Well, let's get into what you're saying this morning. The first one, the tragedy played out over the weekend in Plateau State, shocked a lot of people, especially because this concerned children and their teachers. While they were writing examinations, we understand. So that building collapsed and at least 22 people have died as a result of that school building collapse in Plateau State. So what are you saying about this? First user, P-Peace, with some figures, says it breaks my heart hearing stories of this magnitude. Truly trying and unfortunate, the user says, and offers his condolences.
Indeed, and those images were very heartbreaking. You could see, a mother lying on the floor. I wonder what the news was from that incident for her. You could see children, some of them being rescued, and sadly, some of them were unable to be rescued. What happened, to that building? Were there any indications that the structure was weak? And if there were, why wasn't there, something done to salvage the situation? Very important questions to ask this morning. But this next reaction is from Josh Peterson, who says, just look at the building and you can tell that the building must have shaken for a long time before it finally collapsed.
The next one is from official_Kulex, says, my heartfelt condolences go out to the victims and imagined families. Such a tragedy is deeply saddening, and I hope that the affected families find strength and support during this difficult time. May the memories of those lost be a source of inspiration for change in safety measures and infrastructure.
Amen to that. And this next one is from West Zeus, who says the engineer and the landlord should be arrested the community should be sensitized on quality assurance, and that is essential. How many other buildings like that in, Plateau, particularly in the neighboring areas to that location, are structurally weak, and who is paying attention? Absolutely.
So that is something we'll take on this morning. You may think it doesn't concern you that this happened in Plateau State, but just maybe they thought it didn't concern them as well, particularly those who were meant to be responsible. And that's what this next user says. Don't forsake me. It says, look at the structure. It was surely a disaster waiting to happen. So the people see this and didn't say anything. Who's meant to even say something? You talked about the landlord, the engineer. That's what a previous user said. So we'll get into these issues this morning.
Indeed. So what about the state quality assurance for, the integrity of buildings in Plateau State? Do they have such a ministry? And if they do, are they being proactive about their job, or have they been caught napping? This next one is from Chima Echefule, who says, may the souls of those who lost their lives rest in peace, and may God give their relatives the strength to bear this loss.
Well, Prince Charles, that's Black Soldier, also re-echoes that statement, essentially offering condolences to the families. Some would say we should maybe never have gotten to this point anyway if the proactive measures were taken. As we said, this is a big topic for us on the show this morning. We'll take a look at what happened in Plateau and how to stem this. These are children. They didn't deserve that.
Away from that now to this next talking point, which is equally concerning as it affects, businesses, it affects investment, it affects, residents, on that corridor.
And mobility as well.
Indeed. And, it's about the Lagos State government's ban on Dangote, that's the yellow buses, plying that route, and Korokwe, or the smaller buses that also walk on 4 feet. You know them when you see them. So what are some of your thoughts to this ban? The ban, by the way, is along the Lekki-Ekpe corridor. That's where it affects. So this first reaction is from Mr. Ebony, who says, well, it won't be out of place, provided they have a better alternative in place of the Korokwe and Danfo buses plying the route. In the absence of a better alternative, they should better stay action.
Well, Cephas Cole re-echoes that, and Prophet's Solution says, good development. So it looks like people are saying this is good, but there's a condition. Alternative should be in place for about 6 months for people to get familiar and acclimatized to it. So I imagine you're saying 6 months before the ban. Also, I hope there's another means of livelihood for the drivers. This user says if these two factors are negative, then it is well. That's if they're not done, then that's going to be a challenge.
Indeed, something to note, especially because that's an industrial zone, and there are a number of people who ply that route as workers. Some who also have businesses as well. So it's going to affect their mobility to a very large extent. So what alternative?
Corridor, I believe.
Yeah.
The Dangote refinery is also on that corridor.
On that corridor as well. And I believe the free trade zone is also on that corridor. So let's move on, with the talking point this time around to a subject matter on security. The police arrest 2 suspected kidnappers, exhume victims' corpse in Ogun State. Some progress recorded there. Recall last week we had cause to also talk about the neutralizing of about 9 kidnappers in Lagos State. So this is cheery. And the first reaction is from Jersey's Footwear, who says, sometimes community members should see something and say something. But knowing how police sometimes work, you understand their fears. There's a huge level of distrust between police and public. But again, in the video are 2 gangs of kidnappers. The police use the station 2 as their den, charge ransom often.
There you go.
That's a big one there.
It's a big one. So we need to keep our eyes peeled as people and as security agencies. We don't want to be caught napping. It looks like this is on the rise, particularly in areas you never heard about kidnapping, or at least they've been far in between. But those are the trending issues this morning.
Yeah, and we're going to start off with the very, very unsettling matter of building collapses. What are the implications and what are the lessons to learn to prevent a reoccurrence? Join us for that conversation right after this time out.